November 18th, 1944, 0840 hours. The Hurtgen Forest, 2 kilometers east of Wassenack. Unteroffizier Karl Brenner crouched in the reinforced concrete pillbox, listening to the American advance stall against interlocking machine gun fire. For 3 days, they had come in waves. Infantry charging through the skeletal trees, falling back, regrouping, charging again. The bunker held. Steel-reinforced walls, 18 inches thick, proof against anything short of a direct artillery hit. Firing slits angled to create overlapping kill zones, ventilation shafts drawing air from protected rear channels. This was German engineering, the fortress doctrine perfected over years of defensive warfare. Then the force went quiet. Through the narrow observation port, Brenner saw movement. 2 Americans, smaller packs than the riflemen, moving with strange deliberation. One carried what looked like oversized fuel canisters strapped to his back. The other raised a wand-like apparatus. Brenner opened his mouth to call the target when the world turned to liquid fire. Not an explosion, worse. Fire that flowed like water, curving through the firing slit, cascading along walls, finding every gap and crevice, turning the concrete shelter into a crematorium. The last thing Karl Brenner understood was that walls meant nothing anymore. The German military had built its defensive philosophy on the sanctity of fortification. From the Siegfried Line to the Gothic Line, from concrete pillboxes in Normandy to log and earth bunkers in Russia, the principle remained constant. Protected positions multiplied a soldier's combat effectiveness. A single MG-42 team in a properly constructed bunker could hold against a company of attackers. The mathematics were proven across every theater. Attacking troops, exposed in open ground, suffered casualties at rates 10 to 20 times higher than defenders behind cover. German tactical doctrine emphasized this asymmetry. Fight from prepared positions, force the enemy to come to you, let them spend lives against your fortifications. By late 1944, as German forces withdrew toward the Reich, this defensive strategy had become doctrine elevated to desperation. Every riverline, every forest, every village became a network of interlocking strongpoints. Bunkers were sited with overlapping fields of fire, reinforced against grenades and small arms, positioned to require frontal assault. American and British forces would have to pay in blood for every 100 meters. Except the Americans brought something German planners had dismissed as a terror weapon of limited tactical value: the man-portable flamethrower. The M2 flamethrower, improved to the M2A1 by 1944, was not a new invention. Germans had deployed Flamethrower for units since World War I. The Italians had experimented with portable models. But European military thinking regarded flamethrowers as specialized equipment. Brutal, yes, but logistically impractical. The fuel mixture was volatile. Range was limited to 30 or 40 meters. The weapon made its operator a priority target, vulnerable and conspicuous. Most critically, flame weapons were seen as tools of terror rather than tactical necessity. The German army maintained small flamethrower units, but their doctrine relegated them to specific scenarios: clearing bunkers in urban warfare, suppressing tunnels and caves. No army had integrated flamethrowers as standard infantry weapons for routine combat operations. The Americans did. By late 1944, flamethrower teams had been incorporated into rifle companies as standard assault elements. Not specialized units called in for specific targets, but organic assets immediately available to company commanders. This wasn't improvisation. It was industrial-scale deployment of a weapon system most armies treated as exotic.
What stunned German defenders wasn't the weapon's existence, but its ubiquity and the tactical doctrine supporting it. Lieutenant Hans Weber, defending a bunker complex near Aachen, described this systematic destruction in his combat journal. The Americans did not charge our positions as before. They advanced with infantry screens, identifying our firing positions. Then came the flame teams, always 2 men, one carrying the apparatus, one providing security. They moved with rehearsed precision, covered by smoke and suppressing fire. We could see them coming, could even engage them, but our fire had to be perfect. Miss and they reached effective range. At 30 meters, they fired. Not brief bursts like our Flammenwerfer, but sustained streams lasting 8-10 seconds. The flame didn't dissipate. It clung to surfaces, flowed through openings, generated smoke and heat that made the bunker uninhabitable. Survivors had 2 choices: burn or evacuate into machine gun fire. Most chose burning. The flamethrower transformed bunkers from protective shelters into death traps, inverting the fundamental logic of defensive warfare. The tactical revolution extended beyond the weapon itself to the American willingness to expend it. German intelligence reports from late 1944 documented flamethrower usage rates that seemed impossible. Companies reported encountering flame teams daily, sometimes multiple times in a single engagement. Captured equipment revealed manufacturing details that disturbed German analysts. The fuel tanks were cheaply produced, the ignition systems simple and reliable, the entire apparatus designed for mass production rather than precision engineering. More troubling were the fuel consumption figures. A single flamethrower could exhaust its 70 pounds of napalm mixture in 10 seconds of continuous fire. American teams used them liberally. Full bursts against individual bunkers, sustained streams to clear trenches, casual expenditure that suggested unlimited resupply. The logistical implications were staggering. Each flamethrower team required constant replenishment of volatile fuel, specialized equipment maintenance, training, and hazardous weapon operation. The Americans were sustaining this across entire divisions, treating the flamethrower not as a special weapon, but as routine infantry equipment, like rifles or grenades. The psychological impact cut deeper than the physical casualties. German soldiers had been trained to trust their fortifications, to find psychological security in concrete and earth. The bunker was sanctuary, a place where you could catch your breath, tend to wounds, eat a meal behind protective walls. Flamethrowers destroyed that sanctuary with uniquely horrifying efficiency. Survivors described the terror not of the flame itself, but of helplessness, watching the fire snake through ventilation shafts designed to keep you alive, feeling the temperature spike as oxygen was consumed, knowing the only escape led directly into enemy fire. Veterans who had survived artillery barrages and tank assaults broke under flamethrower attacks. Combat reports documented entire squads abandoning perfectly intact positions at the mere sight of American flame teams approaching. The weapon induced a primal fear that transcended tactical calculation.
By December 1944, as German forces fortified for the Ardennes offensive, commanders issued specific directives addressing flamethrower vulnerability. Bunkers were to be designed with multiple exits, internal baffles to block flame penetration, additional ventilation systems. These modifications required time, materials, and engineering expertise that Germany could no longer spare. Meanwhile, American production of flamethrower fuel, a mixture of gasoline and polystyrene that clung to surfaces and burned at over 2,000 degrees, operated at industrial capacity. Factories that had produced synthetic rubber now synthesized napalm. The same logistics network that delivered ammunition and rations incorporated flamethrower fuel as standard supply. German defenders, rationing rifle ammunition and artillery shells, faced an enemy that could afford to burn through 70 pounds of specialized fuel to eliminate a single bunker, then requisition more from supply trucks idling a mile behind the front. Oberst Gerhard Wilk, commanding the defense of Aachen, surrendered his garrison in October 1944 after flamethrower teams systematically cleared his bunker network. His surrender document included a detailed assessment. The American flamethrower has negated our defensive advantages. We can no longer hold prepared positions with confidence. The weapon requires no direct line of sight. Flame follows contours, enters through gaps, makes any enclosed space lethal. More significantly, the Americans employ it without hesitation or restraint. They do not conserve fuel or limit usage. If a bunker resists, they burn it. If a building provides cover, they burn it. This is not desperation but doctrine, supported by supply chains that never falter. We are defending with finite resources against infinite application of force. The burned-out bunkers remained for decades after the war. Scorched concrete chambers scattered across Europe, their interiors still blackened by fires that had burned 75 years ago. French demolition teams clearing the Hurtgen forest found flamethrower fuel canisters in the undergrowth, corroded but still identifiable, stamped with production dates from 1944. Each canister had been manufactured in Pittsburgh or Detroit, shipped across the Atlantic, trucked to the front, and expended in seconds against a fortification that had taken weeks to construct. They were physical proof of an asymmetry beyond military tactics.
the capacity to manufacture specialized weapons faster than the enemy could build defenses against them. A German veteran named Otto Schneider, who had survived a flamethrower attack in the Siegfried Line, kept a melted NG-42 barrel from his bunker, the metal warped by heat no conventional weapon could produce. He would trace the twisted steel and tell his grandchildren the same story. We built fortresses to stop them. They brought fire that made fortresses irrelevant. But the real weapon wasn't the flame, it was the abundance behind it, the endless supply of fuel and equipment and men trained to use it. That is what overwhelmed us, not superior tactics, but the luxury of never running out, never conserving, never counting the cost. Democracy burns bright because it can always afford more fuel.